walls with boughs of holly. 'Tis the season to be jolly. Don we now our bright apparel. Join the ancient Yuletide carol. See the blazing Yule before us. Strike the harp and join the chorus.
Hi, I'm Ruth, and I'm a member of the Southern Oregon Guild here in Purdy in Cape Junction. I'm going to show you today how to start embossing copper by making a small Christmas tree for Christmas ornament. What I made, and I wanted to make it two-sided, but as I say, these don't exactly match because they're homemade. And believe me, that's as much a treasure as it is if I bought something like this from Walmart. It would match. I firmly believe that stuff you make yourself, now it's not perfect, but it has soul.
Fast away the old year passes.
4 pieces of 4x4 cut copper ready to do their Christmas ornament. They will get a piece of scrap to practice and play with because I like to test what I want to do before I do it usually. And they will get a tool. That is the tool you use to tool the copper. Flat side for the flat paint, big areas, pointed end for the small areas and lines. When you get your copper pieces, these will be available. They are a pack that one of our members put together of ideas that will fit a 4x4 piece. And take these pieces and think about, like this one is very complicated. If you can simplify it, it'll be a lot easier. You will also get what I'm doing on the camera. You will get in writing the directions on how to do what you're doing. You will need small, sharp scissors. This is the rag I'll do the tooling copper on. It's not real thick and fluffy, but it's enough so that I can emboss it. You'll understand that later. A ballpoint pen. If you've got one that ran out of ink, it'd be perfect for making lines. Masking tape. Don't use regular transparent tape. It's very hard to get off. Sharpie pen, any color. Steel wool, 000 steel wool. Anything coarser will scratch the copper. Now if you really get into copper, you'll buy stains and stuff to tint it, but not to start with. Use a Sharpie. What you got to do first is get your pattern on the copper. I'm going to make another wreath, so I cut my wreath out of paper. I'm going to put it on the copper, and whatever your pattern, be sure and leave a little bit around it because you don't want it to end up having to have sharp edges because copper can cut. So we'll fold them under at the end. Then take the masking tape, tape it down, and I put it on newspaper. That gives just a little bit of cushion so that your pen, ballpoint pen, will make the line. Because I tape it down, and then I trace around it, pushing down with the pen to make the line. And I will leave the part where the tape is until the end, because what I will do is probably it will tear. But then you take your pattern off and you've got your piece outlined. And then we pick up the wood tool, turn your piece over, because you've got this indented line, and you turn it over and go along the line on the hard surface. The thing to always keep in mind when you're embossing copper is that hard, flat surface for the background or for flat pieces that are in, and then we'll use a soft surface to push it out. But you got to go back and forth between the hard and flat. That just made my lines. Then I get my other rag, which is a washcloth from Costco. And I also use a hard weave towel. In fact, I think I might use that for this one, and at least to start with. And you turn it over again so you're on the edge, on the side with the line pushed in, and you start pushing out the copper just up to the line. And I'm going to do half of this. And you don't push it out as much as you want it out, because see how it puffs up? It distorts the copper. And if you don't push the background down until it's really pushed out, it'll buckle. I'm going to say, okay, that's okay. I'm going to flatten that. If you want your raised area to be flat and smooth, do it on the flat surface with the flat end of the tool. See, now it's raised, but it's flat. And make sure you keep working the edge to keep it sharp. Now, if I had, say, a Santa's nose or something, I'd say, okay, this is as much as I want his face out. Now I'm going to put in his nose. Then I would just start embossing a little more. See how that raises up? Now, the one thing that you can't do from this side, when you got this, you know how I went around the edge with my tool? If I go around the edge of this, pressing hard, I'll buckle my piece in. So I turn it over hard and sharpen the edges from the back side. See, now it's much sharper. If you want lines, indented places on this, don't push it out and then try and push them in, because I'll show. See what happens? It immediately buckles. And then you got to turn it over and try and flatten around it. So the way you make lines and stuff, what would it be on Santa? His around his eyeball. You do that before you start pushing it out. Take either your pointed end or a ballpoint pen, and I'm going to draw an eye. There's my eyeball, okay? Now, I'm going to want this part of his eyeball to be in, this part to be out, and all of this to be out. So I'm pushing the part I want in, again, on the flat surface, pushing it down, and then I'll go over on the soft surface and push out around it. And again, continue the whole shebang. And I might add, this is why when you got your 4 pieces of 4x4, I also included a scrap one so you could practice. But if things don't work right quite as they should, that's really okay, because it's handmade. You made it, and you will have it forever. It's not something that somebody else goofed up. Now I'm going to push his eyeball out. And then push his eyes back. Okay? That's his eyeball. All these little lines, because this is a wreath, so it's got all sorts of tree limb things. And all these lines, I pushed it out. And then I took my pen, and all I did was I just went around and pushed hard. And there's your, you can work it a little bit. You have to work. I'm not using near the pressure that I use when I push it out. To gently push that back a little bit. And that's what I did for all the little leaves. But again, use the scrap. See, this would not make a tree ornament because it's all different things. But it's just to give the ideas and to get the practice of doing it. And once you've pushed it out, this is one I've been kind of working on. One thing I gotta tell you too is this is Merry Christmas. This part hasn't done it all, but this part I started pushing out. A couple of things. First of all, if you're gonna write something on it that you want to have it out, okay? If I turn this over, my first name's Ruth, so if I put R, and I did it with my pen, and I really pushed, it would be backwards because it's the other side. That's why these ones are indented, because I did them on the side I was going to push out, and then I pushed out all around that letter. But if you've got something written and you want it to be read the right way and you want it pushed out, make your pattern and put your letter on it. Again, I'll use Ruth, R, U, T, H. Then put it up against a window and trace it backwards. When you trace it, it'll come out backwards. And you can put that on your copper and push in with your ballpoint pen, and it'll come out the right way. Okay? This part of doing takes a lot. And what I would recommend is that you do a bit, then you let it rest, let your brain rest, let your hands rest, then come back and do some more. Because it takes some time. When it's all done, then you need to cut around it, 1/4 inch or a little more. Because like I say, copper is sharp. I learned to do this when I was about 7 years old. My mom had to buy Band-Aids, kept cutting my fingers. The kids can do this, but what you do to make the edges not sharp is you cut all around this guy with little nicks just up to your sidewall. These are kind of wide. I'd make them skinnier. And then you bend them over, bend them over, bend them in. See? I won't cut my finger now. They're bent into the back so that they're finished. But you gotta be careful because you gotta see this I'm bending on a part that wasn't pushed out. It's hard to keep the circle even. And you cut the inside and do the same thing. See what I just did? I held this up, went to push on a hole in it. What did it do? It bent the whole piece. Shame on me. You gotta, I won't do the whole circle, but again, you got, see, I cut out the whole circle and cut it down to a 1/4 inch or so again. And cut the little, again, this hasn't been pushed out, so it's harder to do. Which I gotta tell you one more thing about pushing it out. And again, you bend it in and bend it back to get a smooth edge. And on this one, I made 2. Like I said, I put them together and they weren't exactly the same because bending them back, unless you've got a piece of wood, and I've had people use balsa wood, works very good, but you'll have to go to Medford to buy balsa wood at the craft store near where Michael's, I think it is, near where Costco used to be. I tried cardboard, but it's hard to cut cardboard exactly unless you've got a real sharp utility knife or X-Acto. But again, try it. And if it doesn't work and you've got one that's really pushed out and you don't want it to buckle, because see, if I take this, if it's glued to another one, I can push on that and buckle it in just because there's nothing behind it, especially if the one I'm gluing it to puffs out too. To stop that, go in the kitchen, get your newspaper and either spackle, or I like to mix Elmer's glue with sawdust. So it's still sticky, but it's firm. I roll it and then push it in, smooth, make sure it's just up to the level of your backing and let it dry. And that will stop it from buckling. Coloring. Like I say, if you really get into copper, you go to St. Louis Crafts and buy liver of sulfur, which will stain it black, and then you steel wool it off and the copper shines through. I suggest using Sharpies to start with. I'm going to try this one because this one's got indentations. You color them with my Sharpie, and then you can let it dry, or you can see if I get it. I want to do the letters. I just did all them with the Sharpie, and then I go over the copper. My letters weren't deep enough. That's why it's coming out. If you've got a needle nose Sharpie, black or color, that works great for the indentations. But there's Mary from the, you put it in, wipe it off with a dish towel, or a paper towel or a Kleenex. This guy is half of this that isn't pushed out very much. But you can see again, just as this is all the edge turned in and all the inside edge clipped and turned in so that it won't cut. But again, you can just color with the Sharpie. You can color with the Sharpie and wipe it off, but you'll wipe off, if it, like this isn't raised up very much, it'll wipe a lot off. But if I do it with my Sharpie, and then I let it dry for a minute. That's another nice thing about Sharpie, is it dries. Oh, and don't forget to do the edge. You let it dry. Let's fan it a bit. And then you take steel wool. Steel wool that is on the package, they have zeros for the texture of the steel wool. 0, 0, 0 steel wool, because it's very fine. If you get any steel wool that's coarser than that, it'll scratch the copper real bad. I know, I've tried it. But in this guy you take and you go over it, see how lightening up? See, and as much as I steel wool it, is as much as it'll lighten up. But you can get Sharpies in black, red, blue, yellow, orange, and they are great. Because once it's dry, it won't rub off on fabric or anything. And if you really want to fix it so it won't, water on it or something, I don't know, you spray it with a varnish stuff that's good for copper. I just punched a hole through the copper with a nail. Now, if it was really bulged up and I didn't have any filling in the back, that would have been very dangerous because it buckled this even. But be very careful. I just punched it with a nail because I had to do something. I firmly believe that stuff you make yourself, now it's not perfect, but it has soul. Stuff you go to the store and put down $100 for and walk home with, it's probably made in China. It's just a piece of thing. It's just a thing. But when you make it yourself, it's got soul.